And so we're going to have three presentations. First, we're going to have Josie Vita, who's Executive Director of Financial Planning. You see her name up there on the screen. And she's going to share the City of Toronto's perspective on financial and other decision-making information that's provided to council and to citizens. Then we're going to hear from Richard Pietro, who is with the Open Data Book Club, and then finally from Henrik Beshman from Budgetpedia. And I think you'll really want to hear all three presentations. Afterwards, we'll invite you to go up to the top of the room there, just on the very top row, behind the last row. There's some tables set up where there'll be an opportunity to have some more intimate dialogues, facilitated dialogues, to give your feedback. And again, we'd suggest that you jot down notes and ideas in your workbooks, since that's really the key in terms of giving us feedback today. So it's my pleasure to introduce Josie Vita, Executive Director of Financial Planning for the City of Toronto.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City Hall, and thank you for taking a seat in City Hall today. We are privileged to be here today to share with you, particularly in this session, our financial and decision-making information that we use. As you know, the budget and how City Council makes decisions around the budget is a fairly complex set of information, whether it's the financial piece or the other elements that go along with it. So I'm going to be your tour guide today. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a journey that we've been on and share with you where we've come from, where we are today, and what we're planning as we move forward. So with that, I will start. Okay, so a few years ago, we found ourselves challenged on many fronts. We wanted to think about how do we link our priorities from council with the outcomes to ensure that we were actually, that's working, that we're actually meeting the outcomes that council wanted. How do we bring clarity to the city services that we provide, because we have over 100 service models that were out there. All different lines of business, as some might think about it, all different areas that deliver services, whether it's fire, transit, children's services, our Ontario Works area, our parks, forestry, and recreation. How do we bring that together so that people can actually understand what we're doing? And as you heard from Rob earlier, we also need a way to figure out how we're going to manage our financial pressures more strategically and think about how do we address our multi-year plans and strategies. And as you wander here today, you'll see upstairs that we have a very long list of strategies. And so that's one of the challenges around how do we think about bringing those together and setting priorities. As well, we also wanted to make sure that we were taking a longer term or more of a multi-year view in terms of how we think about our sustainability and how do we achieve those goals in a way that was service-based and also looks at our performance. And finally, that helps support staff as we continuously look to improve and find efficiencies. So the journey we set out was really to implement what we call an integrated planning and performance framework. One that, as this triangle shows, tries to connect the strategies and priorities of council all the way through to the budget process on the planning side, and also think about how we then link up on the performance side. Are we actually achieving what we're trying to achieve? But the first step for us to do that was really to look at how we organize the information that we have in a way that would be meaningful, and that was to take what we call a service view approach, or a citizen-centric approach to the budget and financial decision making. So we started on a journey and took what we called the traditional accounting view of our financial information. Our budget was designed and presented in the traditional approach around the costs that we had. And it was very important for us to actually be able to translate that into what we call the public service view, or what I call today the public accountability view, so that it was non-geographic, non-bureaucratic, and was actually public focused. And with that, we actually went through the entire city, all our city divisions, all our agencies, and created what we called a program map. We started a service mapping process, which today is best practice. We started this back in 2007 and actually established what are all those services and activities that the city provides, so that we could actually have information that's actually organized along these lines. With that, we actually created a service profile. So it's not just what are we doing, but it's the who, what, where, when, how, and how well. So we created what we call a service inventory that actually identifies who are the customers, or clients, or residents, businesses that we support. What value are we trying to actually achieve through the services that we provide? And how well are we doing that, setting out service objectives and targets and performance measures to help support that analysis and evaluation. With that came something we call service levels. So we started articulating at a level lower than what we call the activity level of that program map, all those discernible areas where council has a debate about what we ought to be doing. And so since 2012, we've actually had very defined service levels, over 1,400 in the city, that today and has been for the last 4 years, part of the budget decision making. And essentially those service levels are articulated in the budget. When we decide what the budget, the funding is providing, we look at what is the service level impact. So is the service level being changed? Is it going up or is it going down? And what's the implication of that? And annually, when council approves the budget, they're actually approving service levels. And that essentially becomes the contract, for lack of a better word, between staff and council and between council and the public. This is the level of service that people ought to be, that the funding is actually providing on an annual basis. And if council changes that, then in the following year, those service levels change as well. So as a result, and for the last 4 years, our budget is presented in what we call the service view. What you see today is a budget that identifies by area, which we call the program area at this point in time, a budget that has its services, its activities, it identifies the financial costs associated with delivering those services, the service levels that are associated with each of those services and activities, the complement, as well as the the performance to try to assess that. So today, we are in the, proudly say that by the work that we have done, we've got over 160 discrete services that we deliver at the city and are using this service view on a daily basis. And so this service inventory that we've created is actually being leveraged in other ways. So we've created a performance inventory, which is essentially our performance metrics that are aligned to all our services and activities, our user fees that are also aligned to those services and activities, service-based budgeting, which is just what I've talked about. We're also using it in some other initiatives that we have. We're looking at a customer service strategy, so they're using the client-based bundles of the service profile. Our web is going through major revitalization, and they're embarking on a road imminently that's actually reorganizing the website in a way that's actually looking at it from a service view. So gone will be the days when the web at the City of Toronto is organized by the Public Health Division or by the PF&R, Parks, Forestry and Recreation Division. It'll be based on the services that we provide. So they're actually leveraging this service inventory and structure that we have created. So that was really the first part of our journey, and that was really about how do we make sure that the information we have is organized in a way that's meaningful both to City Council and to the public and provides the kinds of information that helps us evaluate and understand how the money is being used. The second part of this journey, and one that we are in fact talking about as part of this consultation process, is how do we actually start linking and making decisions about some of the priorities of council and linking it to our resource allocation process. So, you know, we have the top part, we have council priorities, we have a strategic plan, and we've, you know, implemented multi-year budgeting. So I've talked a little bit about the operating budget. It's a 3-year, it's a 1-year budget with a 2-year plan. On our capital side, it's a 10-year capital plan where we lay out all the projects across the city. But the piece that's missing is that middle piece, some form of multi-year planning or what we call service planning to help link those things together. So we have a mayor who has set these priorities, and that helps drive some of the decisions of council and the way we look at what we are going to invest in. But we also have strategic directions for this 5-year period. And these are the different themes, and we're in staff working through a series of actions that are actually getting us closer to ensuring that we're working on city building and economic vitality, as well as the fiscal sustainability theme, and today is part of that journey. But as a city, we have multiple strategies. So we get information, we get reports from council, wonderful master plans, aspirational documents, long-term ideas, sectoral plans, various strategies, poverty reduction, child care, growth strategy, fire master plan, and the list goes on, and I believe the list is upstairs. So one of the issues is, how do we actually think about these plans? How do we look at the information? How do we bring that together? A, to prioritize. B, to figure out how we're going to fund it, and C, to figure out whether these things are actually achieving what they intend to achieve to meet the objectives of council. So we believe that we need to link strategy and the budgeting process through a multi-year planning process, what we call service planning. So we can actually say, if this is what we're trying to achieve, what are the kinds of actions that we require, setting out service objectives with multi-year targets that we can then monitor to see if we're getting there. So as an example, today's Earth Day, let's talk about trees. So our forestry folks, you know, and council has said, how are we going to double the tree canopy, as an example. So they've set out an objective that by year 2050, they want to double the tree canopy. So that's a wonderful objective for the city. How do we get there? So the idea here is that we actually set some objectives around how do we, in a shorter period of time, say the next 5 years, move along a continuum that says, today we have about 17% coverage, but we need to get to 50% coverage. It's going to take us until 2030 to get there, to actually take action to get us to a canopy of 50% coverage by 2050. So we incrementally need to add to our coverage by some percent year over year. And what does it take to do that? That's where we get into priority actions. We look at what needs to be funded to actually help support that. So the idea is that we'll have qualitative and quantitative kinds of actions that need to be taken. The quantitative ones move into a budget process, and then they get prioritized so that we actually can figure out how much we can do, when and how fast. And that's the piece that we feel is missing, and a piece that we're hoping to be informed about as we work through this consultation. To move further along that maturity model, today a program is defined by the division. So a program is in fact the Fire Services Division, the Parks, Forestry and Recreation Division, but really the goal here is to think about broader programs. How do we think about what is contributing to environmental sustainability? What's contributing to community health and wellness? And so moving to a true program-based approach would take the services that we've defined and actually start cherry-picking them, putting them together so that we can actually link them to the broader objectives that council wants to achieve. Thank you. And so finally, the dream of where we're trying to go here is putting these things into place so that we can actually link our planning and our performance to results, so we can actually say, is what the city's doing achieving the outcomes, and is the money that we're contributing towards those things that we're doing going to actually achieve it? Excuse me, I've been sick. All right. I knew this was going to happen. So, the journey that we've been on is, is one that ensures that as an organization, but as a government, that we are transparent so that people can understand, but also to show that we are accountable for what we do. And so we have a whole regime today around ensuring that transparency and accountability exists at the City of Toronto. Sorry. So we have something called the Financial Control Bylaw, which sounds really dry, but it actually is under review, and our first phase of updating that is happening in the fall. But it sets out the parameters on which we govern ourselves, and council makes decisions about our finances, both through the budget process and in year as well. And it sets out a whole series of things that help staff ensure that we are using money in the right way as it was intended and allocated by council. We actually do a lot of monitoring and reporting out. Here's a list of a series of things. But you can see, and here's an example, we do quarterly variance reporting. So once the budget's set, quarterly, we are reporting to council on how well we're spending that money. both in our operations, in our capital program, excuse me, as well as our reserve funds. How well are they doing? And we've moved to a dashboard approach to make it a lot more understandable, because prior to that, lots of words that, didn't really say a lot for people, too much information in some cases. Internally, we've actually created what we have now as a dashboard, and part of the technology, the journey that we've been on is moving to a business warehouse with business intelligence capabilities. And so we've launched this internally for both executive management and staff to use, that actually brings together some of these key pieces, foundational pieces that we've created. So being able to monitor the budget by service, by activity, the complement, our payroll, and to actually look at trends, and then separately our performance measures and our service levels. So this is something that we've just launched in this past year, and we'll be looking at whether we can do a public version of this shortly. Of course, as an organization, we have to have audited financial statements. That happens annually, and that sets the books and closes the books for the year. So we go through all that kind of a regime. So annually, as we get past the budget process, of course, council meets once a month. They consider all kinds of reports, and then through our financial control bylaw, it is important and it's a requirement that all reports coming to council with financial information have that information disclosed. As a principle, it's a key principle for the city that council and its committees in making decisions have full knowledge of the financial implications before they approve matters. So here's a list of the kinds of things that today need to be reported out so they can actually consider those things prior to making any final decisions on a particular matter. And so every report has what we call a financial impact statement that actually has to put up in front what are the implications of that. And clearly, trying to be sustainable about that is really the key issue. Is it having an impact in year? So you'll see there's probably about 1,600 reports that we review, 1,700 reports we review annually as staff in my shop to review all those reports to make sure that those financial implications are accurately reflected so council has that information. We believe, though, that transparency and accountability really leads to empowerment and finally to trust. Without those things, how does the council and the public know that we are using the money well and that we are good stewards of the public purse? So we've been working through on this continuum that really looks at how do we engage the public on various levels. So we have been maturing, I think, as an organization and providing information, whether it's through the budget process in particular or through the year, that helps us actually provide information at really all these different levels of public engagement, starting with, being able to inform and educate through the budget process, starting conversations with the public through various methods, as well as, some of the plans that we have to do more partnering. So on the information and informing and engaging side of the house, when we do launch the budget annually, there's a whole series of documents that we produce so that's that both council and the public understand what's coming forward. It is a lot of information. The budget is huge. We have what we would call, 44 disparate program areas that each of them have a lot of information and a lot of things that need to be identified, but we do that through something called budget notes. Through the budget process, we have something called budget briefing notes that are deeper dive analyses so that people understand some of the issues that are being dealt with, the presentations, and we have a budget website annually that facilitates a lot of that. In terms of engagement during the budget process, we also have toolkits that we create for councillors so that they can actually have town halls, ward town hall meetings throughout the budget cycle, which both myself, Rob, and my staff attend to help support that. And of course, we have the regular deputation process. And so if you were to go on our website, you would see budget notes for every program area. There's one for operating and one for the capital budget. That gives a real in-depth piece on what's going on in that budget, what's the money being used for, what are some of the issues, financial and other service issues that are being addressed, as well as metrics and service levels, as I've noted before. And so it's really important for us that some of these materials that you will find on our website actually help not just with the education, but also with the engagement part. So whether it's infographics, storyboards, as well as just your typical written materials. They're provided. And we've also added to our mediums with little short budget video boards that start off as whiteboard things, but they're really to help provide snippets on key issues that we come through. So as we move through the civic engagement part of the continuum, you will hear that you know that we actually have a civic engagement office, but it's also very important through the budget process that we continue to enhance our civic engagement. One of those things that the city is doing is participatory budgeting. We're starting the 3rd year of a 3-year pilot in 3 neighborhoods in the city, which will be evaluated this year to see how we actually roll that out across the city. The city's open data network, we actually contribute to that. In fact, we are continuing to improve the type of data we have. I am pleased to announce that for 2000, we have just or about to just post the activity information, the next layer down of financial information on that site to help support our open data folks. So imagine a city where it's easy to learn about it, to discuss and participate in the decisions that council makes. So I want to talk to you a little bit about where we're going. So we've been on a journey through this project called FPARS, which helped us develop the first part of what I've discussed with you, the service-based budgeting approach, and now we're entering into phase 2. And our key objective there is really to take the foundation of work that we've created and to apply new tools and bring new capabilities to the city, not just for the finance folks, but also for all city divisions, that they can actually start mining the huge amount of data that the city produces, and that we can actually access it and transform it for various purposes, whether it's for telling stories or problem solving, and to share those visualizations. So the journey that we're on in this part of the project is we have 4 deliverables. So the first is for those folks who know about data. You don't have good data, you can't really produce the information. So we're in a data governance work as we speak. We're actually documenting all our data sources. We're having data management, data stewardship conversations, creating that and establishing what we call a business intelligence framework. So we actually create the foundation for the tools that we're bringing. So this is where the city kind of sits at the moment. We've been on this journey around our maturity, because really the data is to help us with analytics and reporting. I think it's pretty fair to say we're about in the middle as we move away from standard reports, and now we're into business intelligence pieces, and we're on the journey to move towards predictive analytics, modeling, and optimizing data so that we can actually visualize that both for ourselves and for the public. So lots of data, and really I think disparate data sources really limits our ability to be innovative, and I know that it confuses citizens. So part of our journey is to really identify all those data sources and bring that together to see how we can then use it, overlap it, so we can understand issues that we have and bring more clarity to our problems and bring more information sharing to the public. So the second part of our deliverables is really looking at how do we go into those data sources and automate our ability to actually go in there and report out. So that's kind of the second part of our, once we have everything documented, things are cleaned up, we understand the process, the data governance is in place, then we're bringing in the technology that we can actually transform the information from an automated perspective. That will then help us with some predictive analytics. So we're bringing tools to the city so that we can actually do forecasting of all sorts and more analytics, both sort of backwards looking and forwards looking modeling to help the city understand its issues from historical information and how we prepare for the future. And then finally, you know, we're looking at how we are going to visualize our information. So for those of you who may follow this, there are lots of best practices, particularly in the US, but Canada's coming along nicely. So here are examples of what's going on in some of the key cities in the US where they have brought data visualization to the fore. City of Baltimore, City of Boston, which is called Boston About Results, brings forward all its performance metrics. Seattle, it has an open performance portal. The City of New York is on a various journey. They've started off with something called Checkbook, which is just their financial information online, but they also have been in the world of big data and innovation. And so, you know, for the City of Toronto, we're trying to get there too. So at the moment, skipping around, you know, we have the one in the middle, but this project is to bring data visualization tools. So we're in that journey. In the next year or so, we'll see a lot more coming forward for the City of Toronto. Because at the end of the day, we believe with better information and tools, we can be empowered to provide innovative solutions to civic issues and achieve better results. So thank you all.